So, is it possible to preserve tradition and culture while opening doors to new opportunities? And to answer all that, I sat down with Andrey Petrov. He's the director of the Arctic Center at the University of Northern Iowa.
Well, of course, we first of all have to remember that Alaska is a very large area. It's about 1/5 of the United States, and most of it doesn't have roads. So you're exactly right. It's very difficult to do anything, including attract teachers, and that's one of the big problems. The other problem, of course, is how to transfer resources to this community to make sure they have enough things in their classrooms to make sure the students are succeeding. So that's another big issue. And there is a host of other social and economic issues in those communities, just like in a lot of other rural and remote areas where students just don't have resources and schools don't have means to make sure that curriculum is implemented.
There's also the issue of a higher proportion of students that flat out drop out of high school altogether, much more than any other part of the industrialized world. Why is that?
Yeah, that is exactly right. And there are multiple reasons. One of the reasons, of course, is that in Alaska, indigenous or native Alaskans constitute a very large proportion of students. And unfortunately, in most areas, the standard school cycle sort of does not match with traditional activities in which the students participate, speaking, for example, hunting or fishing. And that's one of the reasons why they feel that it might not be relevant for them to be in classroom while they miss out on important for them activities. That's one of the important reasons. And of course, another reason which is not as much spoken about is the resource economy. Oil and gas and other industries actually take away students from before they finish high school to do low-skilled jobs, and that's why they drop out as well.
If you and I were in class in that part of the world, I imagine the conversation would go something like this. So what, those people in Washington, D.C. and Iowa or New York, they think we're not educated. I don't care. They have their life. We have our life up here in the northern part of the globe. Leave us alone. Let us live our life. So what, we're not as educated, at least on the textbook level. What's the big deal with that?
Well, there are two things to that. First of all, that in some ways it is important to remember that the standard education system must be more inclusive of traditional indigenous knowledge, and that would make it more relevant for local communities. But on the other hand, of course, the skills that come with standard education, the Western type of education, ensure that local students could have jobs in wage sector, right? They're very active in the traditional sector, but then also to get a wage job, it most likely have to work in the wage sector such as oil industry or government employment. So that's why it is very important to have both and include traditional education and have skills that come with standardized Western education.
Okay, let's just say I agree 100% with what you're saying. How are you going to fix that?
Well, I mean, there are already ways of being implemented that's very slowly. That curriculum could be more open for traditional knowledge in it, and that exactly not only enriches curriculum itself for all students, not only for native students, but also allows students to feel more relevant in their classroom. So, but it is an expensive process in terms of training teachers as well, to make sure that teachers are also on the same page and are able to implement this curriculum. And of course, there is a lot of native teachers in Alaska, but there is also non-native teachers who need training in that area as well. So that is a part of where investment is needed.
That was one of the things I was going to point out to you, was that these exchange programs, whether it's for students or teachers, ultimately they are beneficial because it expands sort of your knowledge base, but also culturally, I think it's good to be open-minded. As you have those teachers come to, say, Iowa, for example, or you go up there, you can share a lot of different things, and maybe that might be one of the most effective ways to at least begin that conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we also, in the rest of the United States, should learn more about native cultures, which is very important when native Alaskans, for example, come to seek jobs in the lower 48. But again, it all requires concerted efforts at all levels. In education system, we have state, local agencies, and we have federal department, and that's where the sort of common effort should be to make sure that we resolve this situation in Alaska and any other Arctic community with high dropout rates and low graduation rates.
Can I say, Are these folks up there, are they happy? I mean, do they have to be educated? Can they be happy without being educated?
Well, I mean, I think it is important to think that you know, some of them, of course, would be happy and they find their meaning of their lives. And again, education is not necessarily the only way forward. But I think for most of the people, that would be the way to go and the way to make sure they have opportunities. I think it's also important to remember education creates opportunities, and people could choose to stay in local communities, could choose to spend most of their time on traditional activities. There's nothing wrong, of course, with that. That is exactly what they should be doing. But they also given an opportunity to go somewhere else or explore other types of activities, and that's important. It's about opportunity, I think.